Hello and welcome to the Find Your Peak Fitness podcast, where fitness meets real life. I'm your coach and host, Megan Wrensky, and today we're going to take a deep dive into a diet approach which allows for maximum food freedom whilst also aligning with your goals. Now, some of you may have already heard of this quote-unquote dieting, as it is a very popular approach used by many athletes, bodybuilders, and anyone with fitness or weight loss goals. And it's not keto, it's not paleo, it's not fasting. It's an approach called flexible dieting, also known as if it fits your macros. As the name suggests, flexible dieting is an approach with very minimal restriction. Essentially, no food is off limits. However, this does not mean that the bulk of your nutrition has to come from highly processed foods. It means you can still choose predominantly whole healthy foods that align with your macros and goals, whilst also leaving some room for quote-unquote fun stuff, so the not so healthy things. A good rule of thumb is to shoot for about 80%, that's 80% whole foods and 20% of the things you enjoy. So that's like chocolate, sweets, cake, whatever it is. The processed foods, essentially. If you're still not convinced by this approach, then stick around because we're going to take a deep dive into why flexible dieting is so successful, what foods to consume whilst flexible dieting, and why it is superior to other quote-unquote diets out there. Okay, so what is flexible dieting? So like I said, flexible dieting is having total freedom with your food choices, providing they hit your macros and calorie target, so within that range, okay? It is not a eat whatever you want, it's more eat what you love while hitting nutrition needs, okay? Going back to what I said in the introduction, 80% whole healthy foods, 20% the fun stuff. I want you to think of your macros like a budget. The more you spend, the less you have saved. So, for example, let's say you eat a Big Mac and fries. You are spending a large portion of your calories, quote unquote budget, and have little left over to get you through the rest of the day. On the flip side of that, if you consume a lot of fruits and veggies, you get a way more bang for your buck and still have some wiggle room to have the things you enjoy, such as a chocolate bar or ice cream. So why does flexible dieting actually work? So when people think of dieting, they think of restriction, and flexible dieting is the total opposite of that. Let's take keto, for example. The restriction in the keto diet is carbs. You can eat anything you want as long as it has minimal carbs in it. This works for some as their personal preference suits the keto diet. Personally, I love my carbs way too much, so keto is definitely not for me. However, some of you know me, I was actually vegan for 3 years and it felt easy to me. I love fruits, veggies, grains, and I, believe it or not, ended up growing to love tofu. I felt really good on this quote-unquote diet as I was getting so many micronutrients from my foods. The downside to this, it was very hard to get sufficient energy from plant-based sources, especially when I was playing golf professionally and travelling. There are very limited options on the road for vegans. The best options you can get, if it's an actual meal, it's like a fast food vegan burger, which is not the best. Other than that, you're eating vegan protein bars or fruits and nuts, and it's just not the most sustainable approach if you're traveling a lot. So if you are someone who wants to try one of these diets, so that's the ones I've mentioned, keto, paleo, vegan, there's so many ones out there, then I strongly suggest that you consider your why. So going back to the first episode that I spoke about, finding your why behind something, and keep into account that these diets are only successful when the diet itself offers a form of restriction, but feels the least amount restricting to you. Okay, so if you're on a diet, it should not feel that restrictive. If it feels too restrictive, it's probably not going to stick. Okay. So remember that it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. It's a very popular phrase in the dieting world. If your goal is fat loss, then I recommend avoiding these types of diets. Following these for ethical or religious purposes has a different motivation behind them. Anytime we place a restriction on something, all of a sudden we want it. Think of the pink elephant paradox. If I tell you not to think of a pink elephant, all of a sudden you're thinking of a pink elephant. If we label something as off limits, it only makes us want that something more. So those of you that know me well know that I have a huge sweet tooth. So if you take chocolate away from me for a long period of time, that feels very restrictive to me. If you tell me that I can't eat something, I'm going to want it. But by allowing myself that piece of chocolate after dinner, tracking it and making it fit with my goals, hence why flexible dieting is also called if it fits your macros. But if it fits my goals, it actually increases my dietary adherence because it now allows me to have that fun thing. I'm still progressing and I don't feel restricted. So there's certain things in my diet that I have no issue giving up, like crisps or chips. We're in the States, so chips. Have a think of what foods you eat on a consistent basis that you could easily exclude. Now, there is something in there that won't put you up nor down. So things, like I said, my thing is chocolate, but I can give up crisps. It doesn't really matter to me. But find something in your diet that you can exclude that doesn't really feel like you're giving up something. But you could be saving yourself a ton of calories. So it could be that maybe that extra glass of wine or that second breakfast sandwich you consume. This is a very easy way to reduce daily calories by a couple hundred without changing much. Some common misconceptions around flexible dieting is that flexible dieting means I can eat anything I want. And like I said before, it's all about balance. A good rule, like I said, is the 80-20 rule. So 80% whole, healthy, unprocessed foods, 20% the fun stuff. Or you can even go even further and go 90-10. That's even better. But finding balance in your diet where the bulk of your diet is still whole, healthy foods. Another misconception is that it's too complicated. And it doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to calculate, okay, I'm perfectly 80% whole healthy foods, perfectly 20% fun foods. Okay, but keeping it simple, like I said, just view your diet as like the bulk of your budget is coming from whole healthy foods. And when it comes to tracking, I would set your protein goal. So I recommend 1 gram per pound of body weight or target body weight. And find balance within your carbs and fats. Kind of let them fall wherever. Unless you're prepping for a bodybuilding show, just make sure you're getting overall well-balanced nutritional diet. If you don't want to track forever, track for 1 week, get your starting point, see where you're at with your protein goals, how many calories you're consuming, and adjust from there, make adjustments, and then you can track again a month down the line, see where you're at, and keep making progress that way, if tracking is too tedious for you to do on a daily basis. The last misconception, and I hear this a lot, is you can't lose weight without cutting foods out. The amount of times I work with people and one of the first things they'll say to me is like, I just need to cut out sugar. Or I cut out sugar 5 years and I go, I lost 10 pounds or whatever it is. Or I cut out alcohol. Anytime you cut something out, like I said, it's going to make you want it that bit more. There are things you can cut out, like I said, that won't put you up nor down. But if you cut out things that you actually enjoy, this diet will feel way too restrictive. So a good example of this is my client, Sue, that I shouted out in the first episode. She is now down, I think she's close to 30 pounds. Throughout her whole fat loss phase, she still consumed wine and animal crackers, 2 of her favourite things. She still, like I said, she still lost fat. She still made progress. But the bulk of her diet still came from whole healthy foods, and she was hitting her protein targets every single day. So how do you actually apply a flexible diet? So first off, like I said before, set your protein goals. Okay, so it's 1 gram per pound of body weight or 1 gram per pound of target body weight. And then you have your carbs and fats. Like I said, if focusing on all 3 macros is too confusing for you, just start with your protein and let your carbs and fats kind of fall wherever. Just make sure you are getting a decent amount of fat, as this is an essential macronutrient. But to start, you can just focus on protein and calorie targets. Like I said, I advise tracking your nutrition at least for a week just to get started, and then you can kind of do that to check in if tracking it every day is too much hassle for you. I like tracking every single day. It keeps me accountable. Like I said, it allows me to hit my goals but also have the fun stuff. Okay. Another thing is planning your meals around whole healthy foods. Like I said, the 80-20 rule, and adding some additional guilt-free treats in there. So what would a full day of eating if you're on a flexible diet look like? So for example, breakfast, you could have eggs, reduced fat cream cheese, some spinach in your eggs, some toast, and a side of fruit. Mid-morning, you could have a shake. And then for your lunch, you could have some rice, some seasoned chicken breast, some grilled veggies, and some avocado. Mid-afternoon, you could have vanilla flavoured Greek yogurt, a banana, and some peanut butter drizzled on top. And for dinner, you could have some salmon, a baked potato, and some steamed broccoli with a sprinkle of Parmesan cheese on top. And then for your post-dinner meal or dessert, whatever you want to call it, I'm loving the coffee-flavoured Yasso bars right now. And my favourite is the Lindor chocolate truffles. Okay, those two last things are not the most nutritious, but they're delicious. Now, this is exactly what I consumed the other day. And I'm currently in a deficit, so I'm cutting just now. But it did absolutely not feel like it. Most meals that I have a protein source in them. Pretty sure every single one of them did, apart from my dessert. And they are very, very nutrient dense. So I feel full, I feel energized, my workouts are great, I sleep good. The Yasso bar and chocolate have very minimal nutritional value, but they taste great and I can enjoy it at the end of a day and I can still progress towards my goals. Now, this is just an example of a typical day while applying flexible dieting. Obviously, you can change this to suit your taste preferences. This is what I like to enjoy, and everyone is so different. There's not one diet that just suits everyone that gets you towards your goals. Okay, so it's finding what suits your taste preferences whilst aligning with your goals. So it does take a bit of trial and error, figuring out what foods you can do that suits your schedule. So you may have to meal prep, you may have to plan in advance, but it's amazing how you get in a routine with things and you can kind of rotate in and out and you find what foods you like, what foods make you feel good, what foods make you perform well in the gym, and so forth. So before you apply any of these strategies, I want you to get your mind right. So I want you to shift your mind away from restriction and focus more on adherence. So you want this diet or your nutrition, your healthy eating to stick long term and enjoy the process. So you need to ditch the all or nothing mindset or the on-off mindset. So it's not, oh, I'm on my diet and I'm off it. So I'm on it Monday to Friday and I'm off it Saturday and Sunday, back on it Monday. You need to ditch all that. Adopt this flexible approach where you have total freedom while you still see results. Now, if you do slip up, if you do overeat one day and you do go a bit crazy, that's okay. We've all been there. Everyone's been there. The best thing you can do is just get straight back into healthy eating. Make sure the next meal's a good one. Okay, just have the memory of a goldfish. So forget it happened. Use the extra calories to get a good workout in, go for a walk, whatever it is, but never feel guilty for it. And the best thing you can do, like I said, is just get straight back to eating healthy and fueling your body. The second mindset shift I want you to adopt is being able to recognize the difference between discipline and restriction. Now, it is very easy to confuse the two. Now, one leads to success and the other leads to unrealistic expectations and temporary and misleading results. But discipline is having the ability to say no, but it's also having the ability to say yes. So saying yes to the rest day, saying yes to that piece of cake, but only having, one slice rather than 4. Things like that. So discipline, it comes in many different shapes and forms, but it's being able to recognize what your body needs and leaning into that rather than leading into the instant gratification of overeating or going on a binge or whatever it is. Restriction, I see this in different ways. Like I said, the most common one is restriction with food. So saying no to everything and praising yourself when you're in a deficit, but you're actually under eating in calories even more. So, and I do see this quite a lot, and it's a trap I've fallen into. Let's just say hypothetically, I've got a calorie target of, 2,000 calories, and that's me in a deficit, and I purposely undereat and I eat 1,800 that day, and I praise myself for it. Now that's restriction, even more restrictive than the calorie deficit itself. Even if I'm in a 500 calorie deficit, I restrict myself an extra 200 calories, that's 700 calorie deficit, and I praise myself for that. And that's where an unhealthy relationship with food can kind of creep in, and you may notice some disordered eating patterns. It's a very slippery slope, so restriction is not always good. Like I said, the discipline part, being able to say yes and no to certain things, is great. The restriction is where a lot of anxiety can creep in. And like I said, it's a slippery slope to go down. So that's all I have for flexible dieting. Hopefully I've convinced you to give it a try. Like I said, I know it's got dieting in the title, but it is not a diet. It is very much a lifestyle. If you have any other questions on this, then please reach out. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Next, we're going to move on to the client shout out. So this week I have Tracy. Now Tracy started with me back in January of this year. So that's 2025. With the goals of building muscle, losing fat, and creating long-term healthy habits. Now, not only is Tracy already very fit from her long bike rides that she participates in multiple times a year, but she's also a great example of what flexible dieting looks like. But I'm not going to shout her out on her work ethic or her nutrition. I actually want to discuss the last month of Tracy's journey and her battle with a bulging disc in her back. So for those of you who've experienced this, it is very, very painful. I've never experienced it, but I've had my back issues in the past, as every golfer does. But rather than just saying, screw it, I'm injured, and falling into a trap of the all or nothing, we put together a game plan that helped her progress despite not being able to train or exercise. So she was very much limited to what she could do in terms of movement. But we dialed into her nutrition, even more than what we have been, and we did what we could with the situation. So walking was very doable, so we leaned into this, so low intensity, steady state cardio. But we also assessed her nutrition, and something very interesting happened. So this isn't a typical shout out of this client has lost all this weight. There's a lot of learning in this shout out. So prior to Tracy's injury, her weight was sort of plateauing slightly. She also did start taking creatine, so weight was even less of a relevant factor in how we were assessing her progress. But Tracy began diligently tracking to capture a true picture of her daily consumption. So she was tracking all her nutrition. And what I noticed was she was under-consuming carbs and her fats. So this resulted in a very low-calorie consumption. And it took some persuasion on my part, but we slowly increased her macros and we got her, this is also known as reverse dieting, but we started her off at 2,500 steps and focused on increasing her macros. So she was very good at her protein. We increased her carbs slightly, increased her fats a little bit, and just did little changes week over week. And after 1 week of just leaning into this just steady state cardio and the increase in calories, the scale dropped 2 pounds. That's right, it dropped 2 whole pounds. Now, how did this happen? You never really hear this. You eat more and lose fat, but I did a post on this recently, so check that out on Instagram. So our bodies are very smart, and they will regulate and adjust to what is being placed on it or in it. So if you say you burn 3,000 calories per day, you're burning 3,000 calories per day, you're only consuming 2,000 calories per day. Your body's going to find a way to perform and survive off 2,000 calories per day. So this is kind of what Tracy was doing. She was exercising a lot, and we got the initial drop when she first started with me, and then we kind of noticed she was plateauing a little bit. Like I said, she started taking creatine, which even plateaued her weight even more. But it was very much not giving her body the nutrients it needed to actually start feeling, and her metabolism kind of like got stuck, essentially. Okay, so her body was regulated to run on those reduced calories. So, like I said, our metabolism will adjust to suit the stimulus that's placed on it. And if you do this for a prolonged period of time, it gets stuck at that level. Okay, so our metabolisms are very, very, very smart. Much like Jillian in the previous episode, your body will learn to operate on low calories if that's all you feed it. So like I said, see the Instagram for a deep dive into how to break plateaus and why these occur. So Tracy has just started getting back with very light strength training. We started back this week, very, very lightly. But she's in a great spot to enter a second fat loss phase. When the time is right, when we can get her moving a bit more and get the weights up again, get her strength training with a bit more intensity, her point to lose fat and cut calories again, she's at a much better spot than before. We were kind of at a point where she'd kind of stopped, like she plateaued. I didn't want to decrease anymore. So that's why we entered, okay, you've got this injury, let's try, build up your metabolism, get you going again, and then we can cut fat from there. So this is not only an example of breaking plateaus, but it's also an example of fueling your body correctly. But also showcases the resiliency of someone who could have easily accepted the setbacks and decided to sit down, accept defeat, and let things spiral. Instead, Tracy took action and made the most of the situation. No matter the circumstance, there's always something that can be done. And there's a benefit in everything. And there's always an opportunity to learn. And I want you guys to lean into that. So no matter where your starting point is, no matter what you're at just now, just get started. No matter, even if you're not strength training, if you just want to look at nutrition, get started in that. Just get something moving in the right direction. Last thing we've got is the listener challenge. So this week, I want you to write down what you eat every day. So don't worry about portions or serving sizes. Just make a list of the things you eat. So that's every single ingredient. That's including the creamers in your coffees and sauces. And just do this with a pen and paper. You don't need to track it on an app or anything. And then go through the list with a highlighter and highlight the whole foods that you consume. So that's unprocessed foods. So that's your fruits, veggies, whole grains, lean meats. And assess how much of your nutrition comes from whole food sources. This practice is designed to bring awareness to the quality of the foods you're eating. So even changing the types of foods and increasing protein intake will likely lead to some fat loss. And you can change foods very easily. So substituting things like having a side salad instead of chips, having a banana and protein shake instead of that mid-afternoon chocolate bar, but aiming to get 80% of your nutrition from whole foods, good sources, and 20% of the fun stuff. So like I said, write a list of all the things you consume and rough portion sizes, and then go through and highlight how much unprocessed food you consume in a day. Now, this is a very eye-opening task, and I encourage you to lean into it. Don't get too disheartened with it. It might be uncomfortable for some, but step one is always awareness. I want my clients to enjoy what they do, enjoy the process, and get the results they want. And sometimes that means leaning into uncomfortable situations. So doing things like this, just go into it with an open mind. If you are interested in coaching, then please head to the Summit Coaching Instagram page linked below, send me a message, or use the link in my bio and fill out an application, and we can get you started on your fitness journey. With coaching, you'll be working directly with myself, where I'll provide you custom workout plans to suit your lifestyle. You'll get nutritional coaching, formal weekly check-ins, 24/7 accountability and support, and most importantly, you will get results. Everything is fully customized to suit each client's needs, and I take you where you're at now and get you where you want to be. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please give it a 5-star review, share it with your friends on social media, and please reach out if you have any specific topics you want me to cover. Make sure to subscribe, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next episode.